So, the chapter I have chosen of interest for this presentation is emotion. In the book Physiology of Behavior, it starts off with stating that emotion is a positive or a negative reaction to certain situations that may occur, with examples having someone tell a joke making us happy, someone close to you getting hurt resulting in a sad emotion, and being taken for granted would make someone display the anger emotion, with there not being a thing called neutral emotion. Emotions are patterns of physiological changes and behaviors which come with feelings. When thinking of the word emotion, it would be referred to as feelings instead of the behavior that would be shown. With our behavior, it causes us to have consequences for the actions that take place. It starts off with the behavioral and physiological responses to fear and anger that we would give off. Starting off with fear is an adaptive emotional response that works with the brain by the nuclei of the amygdala. While mostly seen as a negative emotion, it is also something that helps keep us safe from harm's way. Emotional responses have three types of components, which are behavioral, autonomic, and hormonal. The behavioral component handles the muscular movements that are operating based on what is needed. Autonomic responses help bring out behaviors and provide quick mobilization of energy for the movements. Hormonal responses reinforce the autonomic responses with the hormones secreted by the adrenal medulla, which is the epinephrine and the norepinephrine, further increasing the blood flow to the muscles and causes nutrients stored in the muscles to be converted into glucose. And there's also the adrenal cortex that secretes the steroid hormones, which also helps to make the glucose available to the muscles. The amygdala plays a part in reactions to objects and situations that have biological significance, such as those of pain or other consequences, or food, or water, salt, or even infants in need of care. Researchers from laboratories have shown that single neurons in various nuclei of the amygdala become active when emotionally relevant stimuli are present. The amygdala comprises several groups, but the main ones for this certain chapter are only three, which is the lateral nucleus, the basal nucleus, and the central nucleus. The lateral nucleus receives information from all the regions of the neocortex, which then is sent to the basal nucleus and other parts of the brain. The lateral and basal nucleus sends the information to the central nucleus, which then projects to regions involved in the effects of reinforcing stimuli. A few stimuli automatically activate the central nucleus of the amygdala and produce fear reactions like loud unexpected noises or specific sounds. There's also the ability to learn that a particular stimulus or situation is dangerous. With the learning, whatever situation is present, it will cause fear with a spike in heart rate and blood pressure. The muscles will become more tense and the adrenal glands will secrete epinephrine. The most basic form of emotional learning is a conditioned emotional response, which is produced by a neutral stimulus that has been paired with an emotion-producing stimulus. We as humans also need conditioned emotional responses. Evidence has shown that the amygdala is involved in emotional responses in humans, with the earliest studies observing the reactions of people who were being evaluated for surgical removal of parts of the brain to treat severe seizure disorders. The studies have also shown that the stimulation of parts of the brain produce autonomic responses that are often associated with fear and anxiety, but that only when the amygdala is stimulated did people actually feel afraid. It's also said that most humans' fears are probably acquired socially and not through firsthand experience with painful stimuli. There's also how people can acquire a conditioned fear response through instruction. Any damage to the amygdala interferes with the effects of emotions on memory. When people are experiencing events that can pull a strong emotional response, they are more likely to remember these events. Next is aggressive behavior, which is typical for people to have. It is organized by neural circuits whose development is largely programmed by an animal's genes. Many aggressive behaviors are related to reproduction also, while others can be related to self-defense when being threatened by something. Aggressive behaviors can consist of casual attacks or may simply involve threat behaviors, which consist of posture or gestures that warn whoever to leave. There's also impulse control, with many investigators believing that impulsive violence is a consequence of faulty emotional regulation. For many, though, frustrations might produce an urge to respond emotionally, but we usually manage to calm ourselves and suppress these urges. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which includes the medial orbital frontal cortex and the sublingual anterior cingulate cortex, which plays an important role in regulating our responses to such situations. Many investigators believe that impulsive violence is a consequence of faulty emotional regulation, which have been stated before. But with this, the amygdala playing a role in bringing anger and violent emotional reactions to the front. And while doing that, the prefrontal cortex plays an important role by keeping the behaviors under wraps, by making us see it as something bad. The amygdala tends to mature early, but before the prefrontal cortex, it matures much later, during late childhood and early adulthood. As the prefrontal cortex blooms, adolescents show a steady increase in speed of cognitive processing, abstract reasoning ability, and ability to the wrong responses. A study has shown that aggressive behavior during parent-child interactions during adolescence was positively related to the volume of the amygdala and negatively related to the right medial prefrontal cortex. This actually explains why, when we are in our teenage years, how these emotions play out when in contact with our parental figures in our lives, and how it can cause certain situations to arise. Next is the fact that evidence have pointed towards the fact that emotional reactions guide moral judgments, which we would make, as well as the decisions involving personal risks and rewards, and that the prefrontal cortex plays a role in this as well. While this is something that is important to know, whether we already know about this or not, another is that effective communication is a two-way process. But it is the ability to display your emotional state by changes in expression being useful only if other people are able to recognize them. Recognizing what emotion is being displayed on a person's face is generally something that would be known instantly and accurately, while for others it wouldn't be as easy. We recognize the emotion that other people are feeling visually and with the audition, seeing the facial expressions they decided to show. and hearing the tone of voice and choice of words. As in the other parts of this chapter, the amygdala plays an important role in emotions. It is also what helps with emotional recognition as well, like the fact that lesions on the amygdala can mess up a person's ability to recognize facial expressions like fear. And although this does happen when lesions are involved, studies have also found that they don't affect people's ability to recognize the emotions that are in our tone. Recognition of people's emotional expressions involves the right hemisphere instead of the left. There's also neurons that are in the temporal sulcus that are sensitive to direction of gaze and sends information to the other parts of the brain, with mirror neurons in the ventral premotor cortex receiving visual information concerning other people that are responsible for the facial expressions. All of this is basically what I decided to add from the chapter because I felt that this would be of an interest to me based on what I read and what I saw in the book. Thank you.